Today, we're going to talk all about how to properly and effectively argue with your spouse. And that's coming up
right now.
Keep calm and argue on, right? That's what this is titled for today. Hey, look, let's be honest, right? There's arguing's going to happen, right? At some degree within your marriage. And if it's not, you're really not communicating. So today we really want to talk about some key things about how to have some healthy arguments or conversations within your marriage, right? Some rules, some things of that nature that's really going to help along those lines.
We argue healthy, I think.
I think we're pretty healthy in arguing.
In the beginning, I don't think we did.
I think we stunk at it pretty bad.
Yeah.
What's that? Yeah. So what's up, girl? What's on your mind?
Nothing.
Nothing.
I
You've
mean,
been a blank slate the last few times.
Well, I mean, we have a lot going on, and Graydon's getting ready to leave for Tennessee tomorrow early in the morning with the band trip. We got to pack him this evening.
Yes.
He did just have 3 different band competitions because he's in 3 different bands, and all 3 of the bands got perfect scores.
And they're going to state.
Yep.
Which is really cool. And he's our last kid at home. So he's going out with a bang on it. So it's just pretty cool. So we want to talk about arguing, right? How to navigate arguments within your relationship. And like Kristy said in the beginning, for us, we stunk at it. It was really, really, really difficult. We never laid any proper rules down. We never talked about how we want to discuss things and the ways that we're going to discuss things.
That's true.
And so there's a lot that we want to talk about today on this episode. So if you haven't had a chance yet, please like, subscribe, depending on what platform you're on right now. If you're on YouTube, do us a favor. You can subscribe to our channel. You can hit the notification bell. That helps you get alerted each and every time we upload a new episode or any other videos that we have going on. If you're on Facebook, do us a flavor. That's good enough. Do us a favor and hit that share button and help spread the word.
On audio podcast.
And if you're on audio, depending on what platform you're on, subscribe to us. Awesome. Yeah. All right. So, want to kick it right off?
I do.
You ready to roll? Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
because this is actually really
powerful
topic, because this is what is about, marriage is communication. It all comes down to communication, and part of the communication is not when things are going well, it's when things are going wrong and you guys have a difference of opinion. I mean, that's really what it comes down to.
It's true.
Got to have healthy habits.
It's true. So we're going to have 3 points we're going to make today. Point number 1 is ground rules. Ground rules.
I don't like that sound as much.
Oh, that's sad in my heart. Okay.
Well,
next week we'll have it.
You've picked some really good sounds before.
And this one I didn't pick good.
No.
You were trying to be encouraging there. So it was okay to make a stab at my bad sound this week.
No.
So supportive. Right, ground rules. She's using her ground rules. So dive in. Ground rules.
Establish ground rules for communication. So I really like these points, and let us know if you have other points that we don't talk about.
Yeah.
So discuss the importance of setting boundaries and creating a safe space for argument. So that is a huge thing, especially in blended, marriages. You guys are coming together. Both of you have baggage from your previous relationship. And a lot of what comes with that is maybe there was unhealthy or toxic traits when it came to arguing. And so if you guys both can set the boundaries of saying, this is a safe space, we're going to be allowed to disagree with one another and talk it through. We're not going to use disrespectful language. We are going to use active listening, and we're not going to personally attack one another because we're on the same team. And then take breaks, when it's needed. Sometimes, especially in the beginning, Josh and I, when we would have arguments about things, those arguments could last for, hours, 3 to 4 straight hours. And sometimes you have to say, hey, we need to put a pin in this. We're not making any forward traction right now on this. We need to go pray about it, sleep on it, and come back to this later.
Yeah. And it is important with ground rules within arguing is that you're not going to do anything that's going to cause lasting harm, right? You're not going to, make any insults. You're not going to use poor language to each other. You're not going to insult each other, right? You're not going to do these things. And these are types of things that need to be talked about before you get into any type of argument or discussion. It isn't like we're getting ready to argue and be like, okay, well, let's talk about the rules here before we get started. That's an unhealthy way to do it. It's not realistic, right?
You bring in a piece of paper.
Right. Like it's time
to sign this agreement of the rules of engagement.
Yeah, right. It's unrealistic to do that. Like, okay, let's use this as a teaching moment, right? It's not going to happen, right? Usually when you're in an argument, you have a point that you want to make that you feel like it's not being heard. And so the last thing you want to do then is try and get into like this, oh, let's talk about how we're going to talk about this. And so it's really important that you understand beforehand, you can talk about like, look, I'm not going to use any derogatory words towards you. Like, we're making an agreement. Anytime we argue, we're not doing that. And if it does happen, the conversation's allowed to be shut down right then and there, and then we'll revisit it. And I think these ground rules are something that really keeps things healthy between you and your spouse. Something that I made a vow in the very beginning of our relationship, and I told Kristy, and Kristy can be a testimony today, whether I've stuck to this or not, liar, is that, I told her I would never, ever, ever call her a name, never. And I haven't in, almost 13 years of being together. And I refuse to do that. That is a ground rule, not just in arguments for us, but for me personally,
right,
that I don't want to go against. It's really, really important that, we set up these types of ground rules. So, like, okay, everybody understands the basis points coming into this discussion. And now we don't have to worry about that. Now we can actually talk about what we want to talk about.
Well, and the thing about it is a lot of couples, if you're together now and you're like, oh, it's too late, we already call each other every name in the book when we argue.
Mm-hmm.
No, you guys can do a fresh start and say, hey,
Amen.
Let's make a new covenant to one another that moving forward, we're not going to do this. I just got done listening to the book by Les Brown, The Power of Purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that you've listened to it a few times. This was my second time listening to it. And he talks about, in relationships for people, it's like pounding a nail into the wall. You can pull that nail out. Like if you say bad words to somebody, you can pull that nail out, but the hole is still there.
Yeah.
And when you are saying hurtful, below the belt words to your spouse, that can have a lasting impact on them. That doesn't mean in an argument you're both going to say all these warm, fuzzy, peachy things that you're never going to disagree upon the viewpoint or the perception of something, but you shouldn't have to call each other names. You shouldn't call each other names to be able to get the point across.
No, when I look at ground rules, it's almost like, bumpers and bumper bowling, right? If you're going to go bowling, you want to avoid the gutters at all costs, right? But if you lay ground rules beforehand, in other words, if you put bumpers in the gutters, you understand that you have all the leniency in between the bumpers
for safe.
Yeah, to have the conversation that you want to have without the concern of hitting in the gutter, right? Or hitting below the belt, or, really throwing the conversation off, because the idea is when you're in an argument is to really discuss the topic at hand and get to some type of solution, which we'll talk about in a minute.
And how amazing would that be for you guys to feel like you're both can go into this disagreement and it's a completely safe space to have conversations about valid feelings or your valid hurt feelings in it and not have to worry about hurting one another.
It matters. It makes a difference.
Yeah.
You're going to be like, oh my gosh, man, what is she going to say to me this time? And I have to learn how to shut my mouth and not say anything or not retaliate. And all of a sudden now that's all we're concentrating on, right? Is defending ourselves. And now you're not even talking about the task or the point at hand. So make sure you stay focused, right? Or not stay focused. She moved it on me. Ground rules, right? Make sure you focus on ground rules. All right. So number 2 is stay focused, right? You have to learn how to stay focused.
And I know a lot of you listening to this right now have probably heard about when you're arguing with somebody to use I statements. I know that's a very cliche thing, but it is so true.
It's powerful.
It de-escalates a situation or throws water on the fire type of thing. When you start focusing on, even if you're mad that what the other person is doing, if you start focusing on, I feel this way when this happens, or when we have this type of argument, this makes me feel like that. And it takes the other person off guard. It allows them to hear you from your perspective instead of pointing your finger at them and saying, you never talked to me about this. You never talked to me about that. It could say, I feel really hurt, or I feel like you don't value me as your partner when we don't discuss these things before it happens. And that's a huge, huge tactic that's actually a powerful tool to use in arguments.
It is. It's really funny. So Kristy and I have gotten actually pretty good at this over the years of really understanding, like, okay, this is something that's just the way that I feel about it. And I was in an argument, a rare argument with a really close friend of mine the other day, and I kept using I statements and I feel, and he got upset. And he's just like, quit saying you feel, you feel, you feel. I'm just like, I've never been attacked before from using a great tactic and making sure that I'm not attacking somebody. And I said that, I'm like, Look, I want you to know that I'm not attacking you. These are ways that I feel. I'm not telling you how you feel. And it's funny how when you're in an argument, people sometimes just feel like they need to find some way, right, to cause more disdain.
To pull you in.
Yeah, right. That's a good way to put it. More ways to pull you into the argument. And it's like, wait a minute. No, this is intentional, right? I'm drawing a line here and saying I'm not attacking you and I'm not telling you how you feel, or I'm not pointing a finger at you. I'm saying this is me and this is how I feel about it. And that way it pushes things towards resolution.
I have a funny story about this.
Oh,
so
I bet you do.
When Josh and I first started dating, he was like a year and a half sober and I was an alcoholic. And Josh had been working the 12 steps. He was down a very healthy path. I was not. Okay. And so when him and I would get into arguments, which happened a lot in the beginning because I was in an active addiction. And when you're in an active addiction, you don't take any responsibility for anything. It's everyone else's fault. And you're very, very, very good at manipulating the situation.
I love this conversation.
Well, when you are an addict and you get healthy, you're very, 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 and you realize all these things to do that you take responsibility for yourself and you don't have to take responsibility for somebody else. That's powerful. And we are very, very powerful people once we get healed.
Mm-hmm.
So we would be talking about something and Josh would say, I'm allowed to feel this way. You can feel that way, but I am also allowed to feel this way. And I would be like, ooh, like it made me so mad. So then I would try to turn it around on him. You know, we'd be arguing about something. I'm like, well, I feel this. So you can feel that, but I feel this. Cause I felt like I was like using his own tools on him, you know, and it did work. He would be like, yeah, I validate that. Like if you feel that way, you're allowed to feel that way type of thing. But there's nothing the person can do. You are allowed to feel the way that you feel about a situation, as long as you're both trying to empathize and understand how the other one feels.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me how you feel in this situation. I'm going to tell you how I feel in this situation, and how can we come together as a team?
Well, and I think it's really important we understand that feelings are fickle, right? And so when we're in an argument, the reasons why things get heated, 99.999% of the time isn't never based on the facts. It's based on our perception of the facts, and then our emotional response to that perception, right? So when we stick to the whole I feel, right? When we stay on the whole, like, let's stay focused here. I'm just going to say in the way that I feel about what's going on. Then we can actually talk about how the other person feels about what's going on. And then we can say, okay, well, the facts are in the middle of all of this, right? And now we can come to some type of common ground and we can stay focused on the problem and address more about like, okay, well, why do I feel this way about this? Well, it was misunderstood. So many times in our relationship, if we have been misunderstood about each other, about the way that maybe we said something, the way that we did something, the way that we approached it, the way that we were thinking about it. I mean, we mentioned it on a couple episodes ago. Kristy's like, we just got in like this epiphany conversation not too long ago about a main topic that we've been arguing about for years, where it was just a major misunderstanding on my behalf, right? I had a huge assumption that I thought was fact, right? Absolute fact. And I thought in my mind that there was no reason to dig in or ask questions around whatever this fact was that I already knew. And my feelings on that is what really was causing a major problem in this way until it just got brought up almost on accident. And then it's like, she's like, I don't think that. I don't think that at all. And I'm just like, my mind was blown, right? My mind was blown.
Yeah, he's like, how have we never had this conversation before?
My mind was blown. But we played by the rules and we constantly, right? We stayed focused on the issue. We never gave up on talking about the issue until we solved the issue, and we understood, okay, wait a minute, it was just a misunderstanding of feelings. And there's so much power in that.
Yeah, and I think a powerful thing, Josh and I just were talking about this quote or statement the other day is, we judge ourselves on what our intentions were.
Yeah.
And we judge others on what their actual actions were. So like if you hurt your spouse's feelings and they're coming to you and saying, well, my feelings are hurt about this, but you're like, well, that's not the way I meant it. And then we want to dig our heels in and die on that hill like, your feelings aren't valid, basically, is what you're telling your spouse, because that's not the way that I meant it to begin with.
Yeah.
But if the roles were reversed, you would be judging them on, well, I don't care the way that you meant it. This is the way that I feel. Yeah. And that's what we do a lot of times in relationships. We're just not willing to stay focused, have a safe space, and allow both of each other's feelings to really be brought forth and say, okay, yeah, that isn't what I meant, but my intent ultimately is to never hurt you. So if your feelings are hurt over it, let's talk about this, because I don't want my spouse's feelings hurt. You know I love you. You know my intention would never be to hurt you. So he's valid in that, but his feelings still were hurt. So let's talk about it. Let's talk through it.
I think the big misconception too is that people really think about being right and wrong is where the answers is. Like, I am right and you're wrong. No, it's never. The truth is in the middle of that. Yeah. The truth is in the middle of that, and understanding, like Kristy's saying, that you truly care about each other. It's such an important thing. I mean, the point is about staying focused. Understand, like, it's not about focusing on the feelings per se. It's about focusing on the problem. Once you understand, like, this is how I feel, I got that out of the way. And once you tell me how you feel about it, we got that out of the way. How does that impact the solution?
Yeah.
Are we staying focused on the solution? Or are we just wanting to sit here and argue about the way we feel about it?
Right. And
there's nothing good ever comes from that. Right? So stay focused. All right. So number three is you need to remain solution focused.
Yes.
Solution focused.
So strive for a resolution together. So, and that's what these 3 steps are beautiful. They're actually super beautiful about it. You want to create a safe space. You want to stay focused on the actual item at hand. Yep. Don't get caught up of the spiraling of the emotions, and then stay focused on what the solution is going to be for the argument that you guys, or the disagreement that you guys are having at the time. So you do have to value empathy and understanding of the other person's perspective. And it's good to start offering up if you, always feel like you're the one that's always offering up things. That's okay. Josh, for a long time, felt like he was the only one that was offering up compromises in the situation. Mm-hmm. And then we have to talk about that. And I had to be valid in saying, no, you're right. You're much quicker to bend on or be flexible on something that I am. And that's not fair. That's not fair to our relationship. But you want to offer up a compromise. Say, okay, we're both not agreeing on this topic. What's a compromise that we could have? And Josh got really good instead. So he didn't feel like he was always compromising, being the first one to compromise. He then would just ask that question. Instead of offering up a compromise, he would say, okay, we both can't come to an agreement on this. What's a compromise that you think that we could do? Mm-hmm. And then that would get me focusing on a solution. So you need to help one another stay focused on what the solution is and what a compromise is that you could come to. I joke around all the time and say a compromise is when both people are unhappy. So you lose, I lose, we're good. You know, that's a compromise.
I think it's funny because guys, honestly, and guys, you need to hear me on this, because guys are usually like, I want to quit talking. Let's just get to an answer.
Yeah.
And I don't care what it is. And that never is a solution. Okay. That's not a true solution. I just want this to end. I want her to shut up and I want to be done with this. And you have to understand, to come to a real solution, this is a big value for you. If you're willing to walk it through and come to a real solution, you'll have to hear less about it. There's so much value in that. There really honestly is. And Kristy's saying it exactly the way that it is. We have to walk through, let's figure out the problem. And sometimes women just want to be heard, right? Sometimes guys want to be heard, but mostly women, they just want to be heard. They want to know, like, you actually care about the things that they care about, you know? And sometimes that's all it is. That's the solution. Maybe that is the solution. Like, you're not even giving me any attention to the problem of what it is. I'm not telling you to fix it. I'm not asking you to fix it. I'm just asking you to listen. Well, my friends, that's a solution to that. And I think a lot of times we get caught up in arguing. It's just like all we're doing is just running our gums. And a lot of times we end up just doing that because we feel like we're not being heard. And that just means that we have an endless non-solution based goal. And nothing's ever going to get solved, which turns into every argument that way. It doesn't matter what the problem is.
Yeah, we should have titled this, Why Your Wife Doesn't Want to Have Sex and Why Your Husband Doesn't Listen.
Both are bad. Both of those end with both of the same problems. And that's the truth, though. But we have to understand, like, the goal here is a solution, you know? And I don't mind hashing things out. I want to hash things out because I want to come to a solution. But eventually, when I feel like we've beat it over the head enough, I'm like, okay, what's the solution here? Like, what can we agree on something? Is there something we can agree on?
And sometimes I'm like, I'm not done arguing about it. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm just mad.
Yeah.
And I just want to continue arguing about this right now. I don't want to come up with a solution right this minute. I want you to validate that.
You want to be heard. Let's talk about it.
That I'm upset.
Yeah.
So I don't want to jump right to the solution. I want to talk about how I'm upset, and I want that validated before I'm even willing to move on to trying to come up with a solution.
And I look at that as like, put your toe in the water, gentlemen, to make sure that the water is welcoming before you start saying, well, we've been arguing for 3 minutes and what do you want for a solution? That's not how it's done. It's not how it's done. You want to actually listen and hear and then discuss. And then if it still feels like there's nothing left, if it's still not, you're still not aiming towards a solution, offer up. You're like, was there a solution for this? What can we do right now to come? And then maybe your wife is going to be like, not yet, buddy. Not yet. Okay, because I don't want to just jump to a solution. I'm not even sure yet. I feel like I want to be heard first.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's true. That's valid.
And that's fair.
And the thing about a lot of marriages is, especially with women keep score. I like to say it all the time, like they keep score. And if the only time people are keeping score is points against another team. So if you're keeping score, that means you're not viewing your spouse on the same team as you. That's right. So you guys win together or you lose together. And until you can make that difference in your head, like I am not here to win this over my spouse, because if I win, we lose. That's going to be your first level of success right there. Is saying like, how can we come to a solution to where it benefits both of us? It benefits our relationship. It makes our relationship stronger. And what can we do to compromise on it? So we both know that we love one another. We're not going anywhere. And these arguments, this isn't going to be the first or the last argument that we have in our relationship. And we're going to get stronger with each one, and we will be able to work through each one. If you and your spouse are constantly arguing about every single little thing and never coming up with solutions, it's human nature. You guys are going to not even want to talk about things anymore until it's a huge blow up every like 3 months or 4 months or whatever, because you just bury. But in the beginning, you're going to have these hours long of debates and things like that until you both learn how to argue with one another, how to compromise, how can get to answers and solutions quicker together. It's part of the process.
And let's talk about the difference between arguing and fighting. Fighting is based purely on emotion. It's all emotion, right? Normally it's screaming, it's yelling. There is no desire, honestly, to come to some type of solution. It is, I only care about being heard, or I only care about telling you about how I feel. And that is a fight. And when you can understand, like, okay, we are fighting right now. We are not in solution mode. We're not in mode of let's argue or discuss. We are in fight mode. It is time to say, put a pause on it, right? We need to come up with some type of safe word. What did you say?
Muskrat.
What was that from?
Meet the Parents.
Muskrat. I remember 4 Christmases where he's like mistletoe when he fell off the house. But come up with some type of term, right? To say, hey, this isn't working. We are getting nowhere. It's getting super emotional. This is not feeling like it's productive in any way. And have a safe word. It says, okay, this is what it means. It means that we need to stop and put this on pause for a period of time, whether that period of time is an hour, 2 hours, or till the next day. It's not infinite. There's a finite amount of time, and that you're going to come back and rediscuss. Do that, because you're in fight mode now. And fight mode there's no solutions that you're aiming for in that sense. Arguments means, hey, I'm ready to talk about this. Let's talk about this.
How you and your spouse can get through disagreements together will make or break your relationship. I mean, it's a lot like sports or anything like that. It's not like I'm the best there is, so I'm just not going to practice anymore. And if I start missing my free throws and I have to start practicing again to get them back on track, I'm just not going to play basketball anymore. When you're like an NBA star, it's literally, that's what I view in my head. It's like, oh, if I have to have arguments and it's going to last longer than 20 minutes, we might as well not even be married. Well, don't ever get married. Ever. I mean, you might as well not even have friendships at that point, or children, or deal with people at all, so you have to be willing to work through arguments and disagreements in a healthy way. You both have to sit down. You have to learn how to control your emotions. You can get heated. You can get really upset. Just don't hit below the belt and put these safeguards in place.
Yeah, as a way of review, right? Point number 1 is ground rules. Just make sure you're establishing ground rules before you begin the arguments, right? This is a basis point. Maybe today, tomorrow, sit down and say, okay, let's set some ground rules for when we do get an argument that we both agree upon. Number 2 is make sure you stay focused, right? Focus on the issue that's going on. Make sure you're using I statements, I feel statements. That way we're not putting the burden on our partner, that we want to let them know this is the way that things right now, this issue is making me feel. And then number 3 is make sure you remain solution focused, right? This is so important that you're not just fighting to fight or argue to argue or just trying to put the person in their place, that you truly care about a solution, because Kristy said it. You're on a team. You guys are a team. You both lose, right? If she loses, I lose, right? If she wins, I win. And that's the way that we have to look at it.
And you have to think about it. Wouldn't it be awesome if every single person that was married could walk around and be like, our relationship is the strongest marriage that I even ever have met, known, or been a part of. And then someone else comes up to you and says, man, my marriage is like the strongest marriage I've ever been a part of. And you're like, nuh-uh. Wouldn't it be
Let's
cool?
argue.
Right. Let's argue about it. No, wouldn't it be cool if you could think that about your marriage? Like, our marriage is so rock solid because I know for a fact. And what do you think of when you say your marriage is rock solid? People think of the bad times, right? Like, they don't think good times, like we're going on vacations, we're on the beach, all this stuff. They think of when you say my marriage is rock solid, automatically people's brains go to all the bad things that could happen to split up marriages.
Yeah.
And the reason why the people that are saying my marriage is rock solid are saying that is because they've had arguments or had a lot of those things happen and they've made it through. They still love each other. They still respect each other, and they know how to debate or argue in a respectful way.
Yeah. They didn't go around the problem. They went through the problem together and came out on the other side stronger.
Yeah.
The one thing we can count on for sure is that, because we live in a sinful world, we live in a fallen world, is that sin is going to creep into our individual selves and into our relationship.
Yeah.
How we handle that, how we choose to handle that, though, is the strength of our relationship. And that's just the truth.
Yeah.
We spend so much time, we've said this, I think, last week, we spend so much time on like focusing on our careers and pouring into that, or, our bodies. Sometimes we get on a kick where we're just wanting to get on fitness or eat right. And, all these things, we want to just like concentrate so much on these things. And we really miss about how all those things can be good building blocks towards our relationship and our marriage. And how are we applying all of that great stuff, right? Kristy goes and she reads a book. And then she thinks to herself, okay, how can I apply this to myself so how I can then apply that to my marriage?
Right.
And that is such a powerful way. And treat your arguments and your discussions with your partner the same way. Don't go around the problem. Go directly into the problem with these tips to help argue in such a way that's going to just make your marriage rock solid, as Kristy said.
Yep.
Super important. All right. Keep calm and argue on. Navigating couple conflicts. If you haven't had an opportunity yet, please hit the share button or hit the like button if you're on YouTube. We really appreciate it. We are here every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern. You have anything else before we leave?
Nope.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.